Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this final session of today's first day of the conference. My name is John Lauder. I'm the Deputy Chief Executive of Sustrans, and it's a delight to be able to chair this final session. I'm particularly interested in this session because I'm currently on a secondment from Sustrans to Scotland Railway, where I'm leading a project to improve and make it easy, simple, and safe for more people to get to the station by walking, cycling, the bus, and on-demand transport than using the private motor car. So I think this is going to be a really good session, and I hope you'll enjoy it. We've got three excellent speakers. We have Dami Adebayo, Angela Moyleman, and Keith Kelly. Each are going to speak. We will take questions at the end of the sessions, but we'll ask you to submit any questions you have, first of all in chat, using the chat function, and we'll then try and get to you at the end when we've got time. First up then to present to us today is Dami, who, just as we were getting ready for this session, was telling me that he's currently in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm currently in Glasgow, Scotland, where it's -2. I don't know what the temperature is in Phoenix, Dami, but I don't imagine it's -2. So you're really welcome, and we're delighted that you found time to join us today. And I'm going to pass to you first of all.
Thank you so much, John. Pleasure to meet you, everyone. Yeah, as John said, I am based in Phoenix right now for a company offsite, but typically I'm London-based, born and raised Aberdonian, so I know what it's like back home right now. Had to avoid and get some sunlight before Christmas. So let me share my screen quickly before we dive in. Hopefully you can all see that now. Awesome. Before I jump in, I just want to say thank you to Coma UK for having us, creating this amazing event and forum really to push the mission we all share in shared transportation. It's a great platform to, share views and also discuss views and make sure that, we're all moving in the right direction. So I represent the Routing Company. We are a technology partner for local authorities, public transport operators, and any organizations who really need to move large amounts of people. We like to say that we are built for public transport. And what that means is we've created a technology toolkit to effectively try and make public transport more convenient, more usable, sustainable, and accessible. So we primarily do this through DRT, demand responsive transport, but also through journey planning. I'll speak on both today, with the session being about what shared transport and what rail can do for each other. I'm hoping to bring a perspective specifically about how DRT can be used effectively when there are nearby rail services and to improve and boost the performance of those services. Before I do that though, just to give you a quick view of sort of all the shared modes of transport, not all of them, there are others, but all the ones with shared vehicles, let's say here, and how DRT fits into the sort of modal choices. What you'll see on the left-hand side here is the sort of door-to-door, more convenient options. So taxis, ride sharing, van pooling, and of course the demand responsive bus. And on the right-hand side, you have your fixed route, more traditional public transport, high volume options. So rail, whether that's heavy or light rail, buses, or bus rapid transit as well. So here at the Routing Company, we believe that DRT can be quite uniquely positioned actually to move people from the modes on the left to the modes on the right. What I mean by that is DRT can open up access to transport for people with lower incomes. So getting more people into shared vehicles by offering, the convenience or close to the convenience of the modes that you see on the left-hand side. So taxi and ride sharing, but a far more attractive price point, which is closer to or more comparable to typical public transport fees, a couple of quid for a bus, or it could be a little bit more depending on how the service is decided to be priced. We also believe DRT is positioned to open up access to transport for people with disabilities. So people who could previously not use the public transport services on the right, either because they don't live close to that, or they don't have wheelchair accessible services, or they had to use their own car or other private services. And then finally, to DRT can increase the overall patronage of public transport. So providing a viable non-car alternative is one option here, again, to do with convenience, but also by acting as a feeder into traditional rail and bus routes, which I'll speak a little bit more about, but effectively using it to connect people to what are the high volume options on the right-hand side of the slide. So quickly want to just clarify, we don't believe DRT is a new concept. It's existed for several years in several different forms, as many of you will know. However, scheduling various concurrent pickups and drop-offs is not a trivial task, especially when you try and do this manually with a piece of paper or an Excel spreadsheet. So the rapid development of technology has allowed us to do this scheduling automatically, and is what makes DRT realize its true potential of what you saw on the last slide of being able to move more people, but conveniently than, say, a taxi or a ride sharing mode. And what I really want to call out here, especially here at the Rooting Company, a big belief for us is that digital DRT is far more than just the user-facing mobile apps. Of course, that's what you see. But the most critical element, technology element, is the algorithm, which allows you to compute the most efficient order and route to serve passenger demand. So you can see on the right-hand side, once you have 10 different passengers wanting to go to different drop-off locations, there are over I think that's quintillion different sequences to pick up and drop them off. And this is what really separates TRC, as we were founded based on years of mathematical optimization research into this exact problem. So our proprietary algorithm, what it does is it uniquely considers all possible sequences, no matter how many there are, and picks the optimal one within less than 30 seconds, rather than just picking what would be maybe the first one to meet certain constraints. Happy to have a longer conversation at length with anybody who's very interested in this, but let's get into the part which I think we're here to speak about today, which is connecting to rail. And just to sort of anchor you in the sort of product base, of course, we do have the sort of passenger app, driver app, and operating dashboard, which are the core products that you see. We like to call our apps Pingo is our platform. And Pingo, the way we're describing it now, is it's really becoming the operating system for public transport networks. So yes, we operate DRT, but there's so much more you can do on it, which I'll begin to show you now. And really what we're trying to do here is make sure that DRT is deeply integrated with traditional public transport modes. In particular here, we'll speak about rail. So there are 3 different ways in which the technology benefits of DRT can be described on our platform in terms of how it connects to rail. So I'll describe them from left to right. So we kind of serve the first mile, the last mile, and then end to end. So one of our features is called Transit Connect. This is our first mile solution, which makes it easy for passengers to connect to onward rail journeys using an on-demand trip. So what you can see on the screen there is, if you say you want to go to a train station, it will then show you all the onward train journeys that are leaving from that station. We're going one step further. It doesn't just show you those journeys, you get to select one of those journeys to say, this is the one that I want to meet. And then what our algorithm will do is it will prioritize your request, make sure that it can meet it as one of the constraints to get you there in time, obviously with buffer time to sort of do the transfer. So that's obviously one very important use case for the first mile of connecting with trains. Then we have Pingo Flex, which is it's a multifaceted solution which allows a service to operate on a semi-scheduled basis, which can be used as a last mile solution. So in this case, we can configure and set up stops in line with train arrival times to take passengers to their final destination along certain routes. This can all be done from the dashboard, sort of operating a on-demand bus closer to a fixed bus, but I'll get more into that. And then finally, Pingo Journey. So this now extends beyond just on-demand. Pingo Journey is our end-to-end journey planning solution, which shows potential rail services, other bus services as well, which can be used to get a user from their target to their target destination. And that could either be a standalone service or it could be a multimodal trip. So to go into a little bit more detail on each of these, as I said, Transit Connect is all about making it easy to connect to other services. So imagine you're a passenger who has that onward rail journey, but you know where it is, but it's a little bit too far or too long for you to walk to. So instead you call a DRT trip and it will get you there in time. From an operator perspective, what this means is you can set up sort of these mobility hubs near rail stations and encourage users onto these services. One of our partners for example, in Seattle uses 40% of the trips are using this feature in particular to connect to a train station. Pingo Flex, as I said, is allowing you to operate semi-scheduled services. One thing here we believe is that DRT is not a binary term. It's really a spectrum between fully on demand, so the top here, as you see, point to point, and fully fixed route services in the bottom, at the bottom there. So what you can do here is you can effectively configure closer to a traditional fixed route, but say at a particular time of day. So the morning commute, people are going to be arriving by train, you operate it as a fixed route, and then outside of those hours, you operate it on demand. And then finally, just reiterating the point around Pingo Journey, allows all passengers to see all the potential options to get from A to B, not just the DRT modes, which we think is incredibly important in terms of just encouraging and driving that modal shift, which we're all after. So the 3 T's of TRC, just to close this out, I've spoken a little bit about our innovative and patented technology and how that benefits rail in particular, but I also want to call out, our team is, driven by professionals with years of experience in public transport, ride sharing, and mathematical optimization. And then the truth, we have our proven results in markets across Scotland, Andorra, and the US, several markets in the US as well. So yeah, thank you all for taking the time to listen to me today. I'm excited to hear questions and also the discussions from the other panelists.
That's great, Dami. Thank you so much for that. There was a lot there, and I think there will be some questions actually, and I've certainly jotted down a couple of things that would be really useful for me to ask and find out a little bit more about. We said that people could put their points down in chat, and we'll take questions when we can at the end. So if you're happy, we'll do that. So please stay with us. That was really, really interesting. Thank you very much. So next up to present to us today is Angela Moyleman from Impact. Angela, I'm going to ask you to come up in a moment and give us your presentation. There you are. Thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot for inviting me to this event. I hope the morning and the rest of the day was already great for you. So, but it's already a success if I see the number of participants in this session also. I'm from Belgium. So most of you are coming from the UK, I think, but I saw people I know from Norway. So hello, Lars. I saw people from Germany. Hello, Rebecca, and others as well. So Belgium is a little bit different, the situation, than the UK. We have a very dense train network, and we are commuting a lot. Belgians, we don't move. We just stay where we were born, and then we commute for work. So this has an impact on mobility in Belgium. I will now start to share my screen. It's always a little bit tricky. Yes. So I am working I'm director of the NGO called Impact. And our mission is to do more with less, to make that possible. We are doing this already since 1975, almost the Middle Ages, I would say, for shared transport or the sharing economy in general. And we were, I have to see how to move my slides. Yes. So we were founded in 1975 as an idea, let's make doing more with less possible. First of all, let's fill empty seats in cars. Then how can we share cars? So created the car club and so on. We are also working on home exchange for holidays. So sharing, making better use of existing resources. This is what we do. And we are doing it in 3 pillars. One of the pillars we have, the main pillar of our organization, is just creating concrete solutions for people to share. The Second pillar is innovation. And the third pillar is creating awareness. And you can see a picture of Shared Mobility Rocks. I think if you were attending the session this morning, hosted by Rebecca, you have seen more of Shared Mobility Rocks. And this is just because we believe that shared mobility really, really rocks. One of the solutions we offer is carpooling, for instance, very similar to lift share in the UK. Lift share is very inspiring for us also. Another solution we offer, this is linked also to public transport, or one of the initiatives. We have an on-demand transport service for older people. And it's an on-demand transport service done by volunteers. So we have a pool of 3,000 voluntary drivers, mainly retired people, and they offer rides to 40,000 people from average age 80 years old. But this summer we also did a pilot. The next summer we will continue this work to offer on-demand transport by volunteers for the last mile for tourism, and mainly for people in poverty. People in poverty, transport is often a barrier to have access to tourism. They can have train tickets, and for the last mile they can make use of our voluntary drivers. So accessibility as a service is one of our innovation activities as well for impact. But now I will tell you the story about car sharing, what we do. And if I use the word car sharing, it's the European way, the continental way. It's how people in the UK say car club. Our philosophy as Impact, we really believe in this Share North pyramid. The Share North pyramid co-created with Como UK, for instance, where they were part also in this project. It's really for us, walking and active mobility modes are more important than our shared car services, our shared car services. But we believe that we can make it easier for people, or that we can bring people more to sustainable transport modes if we offer them a car once in a while. And if people don't own a car, they will make more often use of public transport, cycling and walking. That's really what we believe, and how we organize and how we create partnerships in Flanders. So we really use the shared cars to make cities more livable, regions more accessible towards a more sustainable system. Today in Belgium, we founded in 2002 Cambio Car Sharing, a car club offering a fleet of cars in different cities. 20 years later, we are offering more than 2,000 cars for more than 60,000 users. Those users, they are paying a monthly fee, are real users. And we are offering this in more than 70 cities. This means also in smaller towns. In Belgium, we don't have so many big cities. So it's really a network of shared cars, often close to train stations, of course. We are offering this in as a station-based way, round-trip car sharing, because we believe this is more complementary to public transport and cycling. So for shorter trips in the city, there are free-floating services, but we focus more on the complementary services to cycling and public transport. So we offer different type of cars, and we have by average 60,000 reservations per month in Belgium. And the National Railway Organization, we can still say in Belgium that we have a National Railway Organization. They became partner of Cambio in 2009. So we created the company Cambio. We are an NGO Impact, but we created the company, and one of the shareholders since 2009 is the National Railway Organization. Here are the other partners of Cambio car sharing in Belgium. So the other partners, we have a Belgian holding for Cambio, and in this Belgian holding, Impact, our organization, is partner together with the National Railway Organization, and VAB, it's a Belgian motorist club. So those are the Belgian shareholders of Cambio Belgium, and the Cambio Belgium is shareholder of the regional entities with the regional public transport operators, the bus companies in Flanders, the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium. Brussels is the capital region, and Wallonia, there we have the bus company as well. And those regional entities are the main operational entities. The most capital and is inside those regional entities. But as you can see, the National Railway Organization, SNCB, has 25% of the shares of the Belgian holding, which has like 10% of the Flemish Cambio Flanders, for instance. So this is how we work together. And this gives us opportunities, having the National Railway Organization as a partner. The National Railway Organization has authority on train stations, not on the smaller train stations, but on the bigger train stations. They own the bigger train stations. The National Railway Organization has also access to users, to travelers. What they don't do is maintaining the infrastructure. They are not owning the rail infrastructure. So our partner is the Travelers Organization, which owns also the bigger train stations. And in the bigger train stations, we have the opportunity to offer, to use parking lots for our car sharing service. This is really an opportunity from this partnership. Not so many of them, like 10% or not yet, maybe 8% of our fleet is on parking lots owned by the National Railway Organization, but many more of them are also close to the train stations. This is not because of the partnership, but there is a need for having cars close to the train stations. Sometimes because there is now the railway organization doesn't own the stations. Sometimes there are other reasons why. And those cars close to train stations, they have a very high usage ratio. Almost 50% of the time they are in use, which is not always that good. But okay, they are the most successful cars in our fleet. What we also know from the train users, Cambio users, 20% in Flanders, the northern part of Flemish, the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium, they have a season ticket for the trains. And from them, almost 1/4 since they became a member of the car sharing service. So that means that we have 1,600, this is really the amount of Flemish users, 1,600 of them bought a yearly season ticket because of they can use a Cambio car once in a while as well. And in Brussels, this is a little bit lower because more people living in Brussels are also working in Brussels, for instance. And in Wallonia, it's a little bit the same. It's a little bit lower as well. So you see, it's really a link, a correlation. The more people who are depending on the trains for working, for commuting, they are making more use of Cambio, or the other way around. If they do not depend on their own privately owned car, they are making more use of cars. This is something you can learn. And if you see maybe the average price of a season ticket in Belgium, it depends a little bit on the distance, but if it would be like 500 euros, it's almost 500 pounds. That means 1 million euros per year of revenue because of this relation. And this is every year renewed, of course, so it's much more. What we also know from our users is that they are often using Cambio in other cities. And then we assume that, okay, if someone is using a Cambio car in another city, that they are taking the first part of the journey, that they are doing it by train. Buses are not that successful for longer distances in Belgium. It's really by train, and they are using for the last mile a Cambio car. And like in Flanders, we have 87,000 journeys. Is almost 20% is like a combined journey, train plus car. And if you would say like an easy tickets, we have like a standard price on if you buy 10 tickets, then it's 70.4 for a return ticket in Belgium. That you can see the revenue also coming of this partnership, because we give people a total solution, Cambio and train. So this is really bringing revenue towards the railway organization, which is much more than the money invested in the partnership in 2009. In general, we are measuring also the modal shift since people are became Cambio user. So we just asked our users, are you taking more often the bus or train or cycling or walking than before your Cambio membership? And we see that people are taking more often public transport, buses, metro, trains, are cycling and walking more often, and there is really a decrease in car usage. Only like in the city of Brussels, we also see a little bit the opposites. Some people are having more easily access to cars than before, but in general, and even in the capital, in the metro, in a really bigger city like Brussels, more people are having a modal shift towards sustainable transport modes than the other way around. And this is why we are still, as NGO, as Impact, very enthusiastic about this partnership, about our relation with Cambio car sharing. There are some common actions that we have taken the last years. One of the things we did is making it possible that the public transport smart card in Belgium could be used also for opening the car. This was like a complicated thing, and also it was possible to use the smart card for public transport for the metro in Brussels. But then there was a partnership between the metro and the railway organization with the Belgian mobile card, and we made it possible to open the cars with this as well. So it was at that moment easy. Today this is not so relevant anymore, because now you can open the cars just by making use of the app, so you don't need a smart card anymore. But still, the advantage of the smart card is that you can. There's never a problem that you are not having battery anymore. So this was a partnership. What we also are facing right now, we have cars parked in train stations underground. Sometimes it's not easy to use the app if you are underground because you don't have internet connection. And then I'm still using my smart card for Cambio, because I'm often using Cambio cars near the train station in Ghent, in my city, close to our office as well. Other actions we did, so it's very easy for us to have access to the advertisements, the billboards, the advertisement in the train station. And we can do it sometimes with reduced prices, and sometimes there are moments that there's not so much demand by other commercial parties to buy advertisement space. In those moments when there is not so much demand by others, like those off-peak time for this, our partner SNCB is offering this to us, and we have easy access to this. And the big advantage is that train users are really a target group for car sharing. If you do not depend on a car for your daily usage, for your commuting trips, then almost always car sharing is a good solution for you. So this is the best way for us to make promotion. Okay, the other advantage of collaboration we had with the National Railway Organization is having access to car parking, and especially also to EV charging. There's a lot of pressure from public authorities for the car sharing fleet to for our company to have more electric cars. But okay, we need EV charging infrastructure, otherwise we cannot have electric cars. So, and this is not always easy, but with the near the train stations, it's much easier to organize this. Another benefit we got from the partnership is just the credibility. We are like a small NGO, and sometimes like perceived, oh, those small NGOs, whatever. But now we can say, okay, we have National Railway Organization as a partner, and car sharing. Now it's more in another market. It's going more to the early majority, but in the first years, that when car sharing was something new, it was like seen something only for green people. But if we got by having them as partner, it creates more credibility for users, potential users, but also for other public authorities. And some other benefit we got from this partnership is that we could offer Cambio to the train staff as well for professional trips. And there was also a deal for their private trips for people working for the railway organization. For the future, we see some challenges, not only as operator, but also as Impact, with the vision for the future, how we can change mobility. And you have seen already many presentations today yourself about mobility hubs. A couple of years ago, I got the opportunity to present about our idea of mobility hubs at the Como UK event in Birmingham, also with the Mobi Hub game, where you could win Belgian beers even. So we really want to go from, instead of just a train station, like a multimodal station with a branding or information without any hierarchy between modes, but also with other services. And we are working on this, on the concept. We are promoting this concept of mobility hubs in a whole network. We believe that the network is really important, and not that you do not only have to work on the individual mobility hubs, but also on the network. We are working together with neighborhoods, with municipalities on a bigger scale, but also at the national level, you need a network. And the more elements you have in your network, the more value you can offer towards the users. So the National Railway Organization is a key partner, we think, for making mobility, creating the real network to have an alternative for car usage. So this is why we would like to have them more as a partner for our work on mobility hubs in Belgium. Train station is already almost a mobility hub, but sometimes it's not easy to read a train station, where to go, where to find the right information, and also to find information in an app, for instance. And for us, in our experience we have right now, if we want to make a mobility hub from a train station, we are facing many governance problems. Some part of the ground is owned by the National Railway Organization, another part by the local authority, by the bus company. It's not so easy to create something in common together with all those different ground owners. And there are also many stakeholders around. Sometimes there's only focus, and this is of course the focus of the National Railway Organization. There's a focus on the travelers, but we would like to involve more the local people, the local community, local economy, and so on. And therefore we try to create a plan for them as well. In many Belgian stations, we have a problem that stations there's not so much usage anymore. So there's no critical mass for having staff over there, for instance, and even to maintain the stations. But we believe that if we bring more services that the local community needs, even like in circular economy and other kind of services, that you can create a new important place for the local community, and that then the train station becomes like a new neighborhood hub, which becomes safer and so on. So we are inspired by some initiatives from the Netherlands, but there are initiatives like that in the UK as well. We would like to work more on this in Belgium as well. So this is some pictures from the Netherlands. And yeah, the last thing that we are working on is to bring all this information together on digital pillars around mobility hubs, which it's not always easy in Belgium to find good travel information or information about different services. If you are in train station, to learn how car sharing works, for instance, is not easy, and we would like to combine everything. We are offering this in a digital pillar, where we can to put on important spots near train stations or near every mobility hub. So this is one of the last things we are doing. And we try to create a common icons for shared mobility, which is not always easy, as the National Railway Organization are having their own icons, and local municipalities are having other icons for shared mobility. So this is still a challenge to make it clear and readable for everyone. So this is what we are doing as impact together with the railway organization and with our car sharing company.
Thank you very much, Angelo. That was really, really good. And you've said a huge amount in there, and there are a number of questions appearing in the chat. So please, folks, keep putting your points in the chat. We'll answer them at the end. We have lots of time and lots of time to develop some themes that have come up as both Dami and Angelo have presented. So our next and final speaker this afternoon is Keith Kelly from Enterprise Car Club. Keith, you're very welcome here this afternoon. We have lots of time, so please don't feel in any way rushed. And I'm happy to hand over to you now to present.
Thank you very much, John. Hopefully everyone can hear me. And yes, some current examples from what we're doing in the UK and some thoughts about how we can move that forward. So the first slide is just an introduction to Enterprise and Enterprise Car Club. As Enterprise Rent-A-Car, we have just under 500 branches offering traditional car rental services in the UK. And they cover 94% of the UK population within 10 miles. And we've invested millions of pounds in adjusting those branches so that already 176 of them host just under 300 car club vehicles. So that means there's a community car club in those 176 communities running alongside traditional car rental. We're a family-owned business with strong family values. And we do allow one-way hire between that branch network. So if you want to hire a car one way from the southeast to the central belt of Scotland or from the southwest to Yorkshire, you can do that through the branch network. And all of our branches offer a free We'll Pick You Up service so that people can travel from their home to the branch to pick up a traditional rental vehicle free of charge. And the reason I mention all of that is because we've integrated Car Club into the bigger business, because we believe that was really the best way to take car club car sharing to the masses. And as part of that, all of our car club members also receive a discount with traditional rental with Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And together that creates a very compelling argument to reduce or end car ownership, because we've got a car club solution and a solution for that 10-day holiday in the summer, or for that particular journey that is better suited to traditional rental than Car Club. And Car Club is growing very rapidly. In the last 6 months, we've taken over the car clubs in Aberdeen and Norwich, but we've also launched in a lot of smaller communities and rural communities in Aberdeenshire, in Aberystwyth only this week, Whitehaven, Workington in Cumbria, Porthmadog and Scarborough. And so those of you who are unlucky enough to be connected are with me on LinkedIn will see regular updates of that. So we've now got over 1,500 car club vehicles in over 220 cities and communities around the UK. So taking that all to what shared transport and rail can do for each other, what I wanted to do in the next couple of slides is to let our customers speak and let them illustrate what they can do. And really the message is that the car can be a companion, not a competitor to rail travel. And I've just got three examples to illustrate that. The first one is a HMRC employee based in Bristol who regularly uses our car club vehicle at Wakefield Station. And you can read from the quote, their feedback. And that's an example of how working with employers, small or large, public or private sector, we can take business travel away from the norm, which is in the vehicle, toward a blended solution where the majority of the miles are done by the rail network, with the car filling in the gap in the final few miles. The next example is one of my favorites. It's a long-standing car club member who lives in North London in Islington. But in March 2017, they discovered that in partnership with LNER, that we had put a car club vehicle in Doncaster in South Yorkshire. And since then, he has made 96 journeys by rail from London to Doncaster, and then picked up the car club vehicle at the other end. And why do they do that? Well, because it's convenient. They pick up the car club vehicle for a few hours when they're visiting family, and then they return to King's Cross by train, having travelled most of those miles by public transport. And so that's over 14,000 miles of lower emission travel and 14,000 miles of extra ticket revenue to LNER. Extremely important at the moment when the Treasury is having to supply our train operators in the UK with hundreds of millions of pounds worth of extra funding. And this is a great way of plugging that gap as well as reducing carbon. Another example is a new car club member who lives in RH4 postcode, which is Dorking in Surrey. They joined only in August last year, and they've already made 59 car club bookings, 1 in Coventry and 58 at Peterborough Station. And they're all for work purposes, and they're all in conjunction with rail. So that's another example of 5,500 miles of cleaner, greener rail travel and ticket revenue. And really, just to try, I'm not an academic, but I did a little bit of research, and you can see from the figures on the screen that the average carbon produced by a private car journey as opposed to rail journey is considerable. And a little plug on the right for an excellent LNER calculate my carbon footprint tool. The link is in the presentation, where you can type in this case, Dorking to Peterborough, and work out based upon that journey how much carbon you're saving. So I think that illustrates, and just those three examples, if you imagine we have approaching 150,000 members now, if those three individuals can create that amount of modal shift and change from road to rail with the car still playing a role, then if we can get car clubs integrated with the rail network, we can make some major changes to decarbonising transport. So just to flesh that out, we already have got enterprise car club vehicles within 500 metres of over 200 and probably over 210 stations now, with places like Aberystwyth opening this week. And they represent around 30 to 35% of UK rail station footfall. So we've already got a really good network, and 22% of all UK stations have either an enterprise rent-a-car branch or car club within 1 kilometre. Half of all passenger interchanges already take place at the 23 major stations in the UK, and all of those 23 major stations have either an enterprise branch or an enterprise car club within 1.5 kilometres of all of them. And when we look at those car club vehicles at train stations, 70% of the car club usage is linked to a rail journey. So I think that's very compelling as what's already happening, but there's a huge potential to do a lot more. The three pictures underneath just illustrate a couple of locations. The one on the left, as I look at it, right as you look at it probably, is our car club location in Berwick upon Tweed. And the next one is at Peterborough Station, both provided by our friends and partners at LNER. And I think the image at Peterborough Station is interesting, because although at the moment we don't necessarily refer to this as a mobility hub, but it's within 20 metres of the main entrance to Peterborough Station. And as you can see, there's a Brompton bike hire location next to the car club location. So in effect, a mobility hub just without the accreditation at the moment. And on the right, I just wanted to make the point that a lot of this infrastructure isn't necessarily provided directly in partnership with the train operator. This is an image of our car club bay on the streets of Bradford, just outside Saltaire Station. So it's providing a service to Northern Rail by being there, but it happens in this case to be on council controlled land, courtesy of our friends at Bradford. So that gives us some more food for thought. I just wanted to flesh that out in terms of our partnership with LNER. That's their network running along the East Coast from London to Inverness. And already we've got car club locations at all of those stations. And that's enabling us to work with LNER to highlight that option to business and leisure travellers and help build back better post-pandemic. And we're doing that in a number of different ways, in particular digital integration and better wayfinding at the stations. So on the LNER website and on their app, there's the ability to journey plan involving car club locations directly within the digital journey. And that's been recognised by the case study you can see in the RDG, the Rail Delivery Group Sustainable Stations Guide. And then finally, I just wanted to point out that where a car club operates at a station or near a station, it also provides a service to the community, even if they're not jumping on or off a train. And that's important for our train operating partners and RDG, etc. And we do offer a free surrogate driver program for those people who have an impairment or disability, so that they can join the car club and get up to 3 surrogate drivers on that account. And as I said before, all of our enterprise car club customers also qualify for a discount with enterprise rent-a-car, who also have a surrogate driver scheme and also have a adjustments program with Links hand controls, where we can provide adjustments to vehicles. And roughly speaking, we do about 150 such deals of that nature a year, many of them for several weeks. So there's a sort of niche there where people might rent a vehicle from enterprise rent-a-car with hand controls for their family holiday somewhere else in the UK. So that's what I wanted to cover off. Any questions? I'd be delighted to answer them in the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Keith. That was really good. It's really interesting, Keith, and you covered a lot of ground. You covered it quickly, and you probably can see the number of questions that you've generated in the sidebar, some of which Como are addressing, but others I think will want to develop. So I would like to begin actually with a question for Dami. Dami, you brought up a really, really interesting point, which was the flexibility that your service can give. And I wondered in particular, thinking about winter resilience and disruption, and also the disruption that we see in public transport networks, particularly rail, as we mitigate and adapt to climate change. How does your app help in real time to allow passengers in particular to cope with sudden changes to service availability? Does it have a facility? Have you experience with that?
Sorry, John, my audio cut out for a second there, so I missed the last part of the question.
Sorry, yeah. So really what I was trying to get to was thinking ahead, I suppose, to thinking back to some of the disruption that in the UK we saw just last month, very heavy rainfall after a prolonged period with not a lot of rain. And looking ahead, we're in a cold snap now. There will be disruption to rail services inevitably as they cope with rapidly changing weather patterns. I was wondering how your service helps passengers to plan ahead, and how does it help them to cope with real-time situations where all of a sudden a rail service can go down?
Oh yeah, got it. So that's a great question. I think that the first thing to note is, when it comes to, our journey planning feature, what that will show is that it uses real-time data feeds, which show, whether a train journey is happening or not, whether there's been delays or it's been cancelled. So I think that's the first instance of just making sure that the information is available for users to know when they can take services, because we all know how frustrating it is if you show up somewhere expecting to hop on a service and it's not there. I think the second part of that, to go to your question on resilience and flexibility, I think, historically we've seen, rail replacement services, right? Where operators recognize they have to provide an alternative if rail services have been cancelled, to allow users to access bus services on a sort of rail replacement route. And I think that's a really great example of, hey, typically previously it's, you have to go to the traffic commissioner to make changes to services and whatnot, and they will have to be notified of these cases as well. But that's an example of, okay, bus services can be very flexible in providing an option for users when rail is not working, and in those sorts of cases. So that's where, again, our service becomes quite interesting, because on our platform, for example, you could set up, say, a rail replacement service to stop at particular points, or you could set up a service which doesn't stop at particular points, but moves on a more on-demand basis of letting people move when they need to. So in both cases, whether it's just showing the information of the train journeys themselves, or providing an alternative service to the train journeys when they're not available, yeah, that's kind of how our platform would work.
Excellent. That's really, really good and very useful to know. My next question is for Angelo. So Angelo, thank you very much for your presentation. It's great to get a European perspective. Really helpful to get a Belgian perspective. And something that you said touched on a couple of questions we'd had, which was there's always the sense in the UK that we do lag behind Europe in terms of how organised transport can be. But actually, you were very honest and straightforward, and you said that things are not always as cohesive as they could be, and that, I hope I'm not misquoting you, but particularly the development of transport hubs, there can be lots of different organisations involved, and that can be complex. And that's definitely the position in the United Kingdom, where things can sometimes be complex for various reasons, and quite often through just error more than deliberate action. So my question for you was, how are you tackling that level of collaboration that you need to provide your service at stations? And could you talk us through the steps that Empire are taking to bring people together and to work with them?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Now, those about mobility hubs, the level of yeah, we created some kind of a matrix, and this is like with partners who are like the first organizations, Autodeal.net and our organization in Belgium. We started to promote mobility hubs inspired by partners in the Chernot project. But then, okay, we are just NGO. We just have to communicate great ideas, but then we faced the practical problems. And this was very interesting, and we started to work together with municipalities, with authority on neighborhoods. We started together with National Railway Organization already, with the regional authority, the Flemish government. And okay, what we discovered is that okay, we needed some kind of a framework that covers this complicated world. So we create some kind of a matrix where we in this matrix we can speak about mobility hubs, but we know also that a neighborhood mobility hub and a mobility hub at a train station, they are for users mobility hubs, but in terms of governance they are totally different. And so in this work together with the Flemish government, we discovered, okay, how can we, what do they have in common, what should be in common, and what is different, and who is involved in what. And by creating this framework and thinking about the network, but also about the difficult things, it worked. And there was a program to subsidize some parts of the mobility hubs in this matrix. Others were more to be subsidized by the local government, but it was all part of one system, recognizing those differences. This is about the mobility hubs. For car sharing, to be honest, it is also complicated. Like in Brussels, for instance, we are working together with 19 different municipalities. It's one big city. It seems to be one big city, but Brussels is very complicated. 19 different cities, and there are many governance also having some authorities in Brussels. So what the story in Belgium is that we worked for 20 years already on talking, and with new operators, it's not always easy to access this market. Only if they offer free floating, it's maybe less complicated. But if you want to have access to public space, it is very difficult. So, but the moment you have a relation with this municipality, and this is hard to get a relation with the municipality, but the moment you have that relation with the municipality or the public transport operator, you have to invest in that. But then, okay, for many years you can really, this delivers a lot. So, and this is the situation. We are 20 years old with car sharing, a car club in Belgium. It took a lot of time, but we are, I think, the only healthy car club in Belgium because of the slow process.
I understand. And actually, that's very good to know, because my next question for you, Angela, was how many car club organizations are there in Belgium? And is there a sense of competition or collaboration? But I think what you're saying is you've been around a long time now.
Yep.
And you're the established provider. That's really interesting. Thank you. I'm sure we're going to come back to you, Angelo. But my next question is for Keith. And Keith, thank you very much for your presentation. You showed us the widespread coverage that enterprise can offer. There are a number of questions in the sidebar, and certainly my question for you before you spoke even was, I was delighted to see the image of the station at Berwick-upon-Tweed, quite a large town, rural area, but serving a very big rural hinterland. What is your experience of providing services in sparsely populated geographic areas to tie them in to railway stations? And just to say, you're on mute, Keith.
It's a challenge, but my job within enterprise is to manage that from a commercial point of view and manage people's expectations, the expectations of my colleagues who get paid off the bottom line. but also emphasize to them the benefits of getting it right, being patient, supporting the community, and some of the untangible benefits. So I came to the car sharing market in 2008 and was originally with some of the smaller SME brands. And now that I work for a much bigger organization, one of the benefits of that is I can immediately point, for example, to the fact that last year, or before we launched in Berwick-upon-Tweed, we would have already serviced maybe Department for Work or Pension employees or HMRC employees in Berwick-upon-Tweed, and we would have had to have done that from either from Dunbar or from Ashington. And so I can say to my colleagues, look, these vehicles will take time to become sustainable commercially, but what they will give you immediately is an operational benefit, because you're not going to have to deliver those vehicles to those locations. And even if that's only 5 times a year, that immediately gets my colleagues on side. And then it's about working with partners like LNER, with community groups, to make them realize that they've got to play their part, not as a threat, use it or lose it, but as a motivation to work, to make it sustainable, to work through periods like COVID, so that we can continue to grow it. But as you can see from this data that I showed you, we're growing aggressively. Places like Workington, Whitehaven, Aberystwyth that we've launched recently, we're able to do that because we think we've got the right business model now to take car sharing to the masses without necessarily having subsidy, but needing partnerships and people to think out of their silos to support and embrace the service as quickly as possible.
Keith, that's really interesting. Thank you. I must say that in the role that I'm conducting at the moment, where I'm new to rail, but I'm not new to sustainable transport, I have found it at times quite difficult to reach out to, for example, the bus sector, who quite often there's a sense of competition between bus and rail, which I think is way overblown, actually. I don't think there is the level of competition that bus feel that there is, and there's a defensiveness perhaps between both industries. You seem to be cutting through that, though. And what you said just now I thought was very interesting, that you will actually give quite a long development time to build up a service, whereas the reaction I've had from bus has been, if it's not an instant runaway success, we're not going to do it, and we'll withdraw the bus timetable. Enterprise certainly are not taking that view, it would seem.
No, and then that part of that comes from the fact that we're a family-owned business. So that means that, we don't have shareholders, we don't have a share price to protect, so that when COVID hit, it was hard, but we were able to steer our way through that. And in fact, our national fleet, car club and car rental, is now 40% larger than it was pre-COVID, because we've managed to negotiate that. I think one of the other things, John, is working in the rail sector is quite complicated, and it throws up all sorts of challenges. Like, I've had conversations where a station has been managed by ScotRail, but TransPennine are actually the operator that delivers more passengers there than ScotRail do. Yes. Depending on the network. So you've got to then get out of your silo and think, I've got to work with TransPennine, which is First Group, in addition to ScotRail, in order to deliver the benefits for everyone. But I have to say that since post-COVID and the franchise arrangements evolving, because the operators, and I know Andrew, for example, is on the call from GWR, SWR, is because their relationship with the DFT is so much more direct and annual, that they are far more flexible and innovative in this space than, dare I say, they were pre-COVID.
That is really, that's good to know, actually. That's actually heartening and quite right.
One of the comments earlier was, does the creation of GBR, Great British Railways, create an opportunity? Absolutely. I was at a ground transportation conference on Monday, and there were a couple of speakers there from RDG, Rail Delivery Group, and the GBR transition team. And absolutely, we're trying to get the car club message and the message of bike share and e-scooters as well onto that agenda, so we can create this relationship between shared mobility and public transport that we've always wanted, but we haven't necessarily been able to break through in the regulatory framework that the UK has.
That's interesting. I would certainly agree with you. I think there's more opportunity in and around rail than ever. it's finding a way in that can be the challenge, and really need to do more to be open and clear about how to contact them. I want to turn now to Angelo. There was a really good question, Angelo, in the sidebar about the number of volunteers that you have for your services. I think I wrote down 3,000.
Indeed.
Yes. Yeah. So could you talk us through how you provide the training and the recruitment and retention, indeed, for those volunteers?
Okay. So this service, we call it MobiTwin. Today, the MobiTwin service is a partnership between Impact and local partners, mainly local municipalities or local NGOs. We offer as Impact like an insurance software to book those journeys, coaching for new staff in the local municipalities, but looking at the whole process for new drivers to give incentives to those drivers, voluntary drivers, is really done locally, and it's important to have this local contact. Sometimes, like in Wallonia right now, or in the past in Flanders, they want to centralize it more and create regional service, but it's very important to be local active, to know the people, because it's our voluntary drivers are retired people as well. Our users are a little bit older, 10 years older, but this target group, we don't need to centralize too much. Really, we have to be close to their needs. We have to know those people really well. And if we know the people really well, it works well.
Thank you, Angelo. That's really helpful. Thank you very much. We're coming gradually to the end of this session. I've covered a couple of points that I think are useful. One about disruption, one about availability for rural areas, other training volunteers. My final question, and it's one I've been asking lots of people in my current role, is which railway station do you think works best for the service that you're providing? And we're all friends here, so you can name names. No one will be minuting it. Can I start, Dami, can you give me an example where you think there's either a station that works really well for your service or an operator that you've got a good alliance with that you think is an exemplar that you could build on?
Yeah, it's tough to pick one station, John, but I'll try my best. I think in our service in Berwickshire, near the Scottish borders, Reston train station actually opened maybe a couple of months after we launched the service back in, I think it was April of this year. And one of the things we were very excited about was trying to encourage people across Berwickshire to take trips to get to Reston Station. So that's an easy one and quick one for me to call out because it's top of mind. But ultimately for us, the important thing is being able to, first of all, whoever the railway operator is, ideally they share data in GTFS format, so that is the real-time format, so we can see it. And then pretty much any train station we can work with in terms of our services. But I think whenever there's a new opening station that wants to drive more, patronage and footfall to that station, I think that's a really good fit for us. So that's why I'd call out Reston. Thank
you, Dami. I couldn't be any happier that you called out Reston. That's the part of the world that I come from. So I'm really pleased about that. That's lovely. Angela, can I turn to you now? Can you maybe give us an example of a station in Belgium that you'd say, this is really good, it works really well, and tell us why you would say that?
Okay, normally I had the time to think about this question, but I was answering the chat box. So it's, for me, the most important thing is that the station is readable, that you can find those cars, that they are not hidden somewhere. The best car sharing a link between car sharing and bike sharing. This was in the chat box as well, and there's a good relation between bike sharing and train stations as well in Belgium. It's where if you leave this train station, that you see immediately the cars. So, and for instance, it's difficult to say. In Ghent, the amount of cars is really good, but you need to know where they are. There are like 20 cars, but they are underground. I prefer to have them really next to the station, really visible. I have to think about a good example.
No, I think you've given us a couple of heads up, and the underground parking I hadn't thought of. So that's really helpful. That's something really valuable I've learned today. Keith, can I turn to you now? Can you think, Keith, of a service that you're providing at a station where you think this is really good and one that I want to use as an example?
I think two comments. First of all, I think our whole partnership with LNER is fantastic. And I say that because it complements LNER in their major cities, the Edinburgh, Leeds, York, Newcastle and London, through the car club network that we've got on street in those cities. But then it also works at places like Berwick that are more rural, or Durham, and it also works in Peterboroughs, where the distance to travel is quite long from north or south, but you've got a big hinterland where people might need to go on leisure trips or go for business trips, that, you know, basically the car club service is enabling people to do the majority of the miles from around the UK by rail. So the whole LNER partnership, and one of the other ones I would talk about is our car club at Buxton in Derbyshire, where we've got a car club car and a car club van. And I've had some really nice feedback from some of the small businesses in central Buxton, who since the car club van went there, have really been able to survive the pandemic and the cost of living crisis by ditching old polluting diesels and using the diesel at the station as a shared resource between multiple small businesses who never meet each other, but are now using that as a resource as well as the retail, the residential community. So I think that's an interesting piece. When I talk to train operating companies, they're always trying to find ways for stations to be part of the community, and that's where they can be supporting the business community in Buxton, thanks to our partnership with Northern Rail.
Thanks very much, Keith. That's a great example. Very, very interesting. So I'm going to draw things to a conclusion now. We might give you 5 minutes back in your day, which is no bad thing. I'm going to turn now and ask Antonia Roberts from Como just to bring the session to a close.
Hi, everybody. Oh, thank you so much, John. I think that was an excellent session. Thank you to all those speakers. I think it's really interesting for us because rail is a new area for us. We've got a new staff member working on this sector, so it's great to sort of hear about the innovations. And I hope you've all got a lot out of today. I think there've been some really interesting sessions. I think every year we aim to take a snapshot of where the sector's at, and it's been a really good opportunity to see where those innovations and things have moved on each year. Also, thank you so much to all our sponsors. We are a small charity, so it's really important to get this support and really appreciate it. It is really important to us. A note to remind you that all of the sessions are recorded and will be online in the next weeks or two, so please look out for that on our website. So here is a bit of a taster for what we can expect tomorrow, another day 2 of our sessions. Bit of a Scottish flavour to start off with, and then we'll be looking at community work, the economics of shared transport, and ending up focusing on policy. Also a reminder that we've got some real live proper drinks in the evening for those of you based in London or Edinburgh, so I hope you can join us there. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining, and really have a lovely evening. Thank you.